Hey friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Adanna, and on this channel we talk about all things stories and self-care. So that's books that we love, books that we want to read, authors that we love, and self-care. If you're interested in that sort of content, definitely subscribe down below. And if you are returning, welcome. It's so good to see you again, friend. So in my opinion, 2021 has been an amazing year for books. There have been so many new releases that have been so highly anticipated. And oftentimes those stories are from diverse authors, or they're stories that share a diversity of thought or a way of thinking. These are some of the highly anticipated books that came out this year that I've been really wanting to get to, but just haven't gotten around to just yet. But don't worry, I'm definitely going to read them. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe you've read them or maybe you haven't read them and you're looking for a good book to put next on your TBR. So if you're interested in that, definitely stay tuned. I'm gonna go through these books in order of publish date. So the first book that I'm really looking forward to reading, and I've actually already picked it up and I have it on my bookshelf, is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. So this is not a new author. She has written quite a few books that are quite popular. She's known for writing The Great Alone and The Nightingale. This book I'm really excited to see from her because she's really known for writing a lot of historical fictions, and that is a genre that I'm starting to slowly find myself just enamored by. So I'm really excited to read this book. I loved the cover. Although it was published in February, it gave me such a fall vibe, and I knew that I wanted to wait until the fall time and maybe the winter to read it. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about what that book is about. Texas, 1934. Millions are out of work and a drought has broken the Great Plains. Farmers are fighting to keep their land and their livelihoods as the crops are failing, the water is drying up, and dust threatens to bury them all. One of the darkest periods of the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl era, has arrived with a vengeance. In this uncertain and dangerous time, Elsa Martinelli, like so many of her neighbors, must make an agonizing choice. Fight for the land she loves or go west to California in search of a better life. So I have heard so much about the Great Depression, just learning about the financial impacts that it had on people, what life, how scary life was during that time. But I'm really looking forward to this particular book because it's going to give me what I imagine would be an actual real life story or perspective from someone that actually lived through that time period, or what that person maybe was thinking with how they had to move, how they had to kind of change their livelihood in order to survive. And I'm really excited that really following a woman throughout this particular journey. I think a lot of times in that era, it was the men's stories that were shown and told, but you never really saw how the women had to change basically the way they lived in order to be able to provide for their family. So I'm really excited to not only get a feel or understanding, a better understanding of that particular time period, but also see it from the perspective of a woman. So the next book that I'm super excited to talk about is FireKeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boley. This was published in March of this year, and it is a young adult thriller about a teen who has to kind of help and aid in rooting out corruption within her community. And she lives on a reservation, and I am actually really excited to have this on my list because as I like to diversify my reading material, I have not actually read many stories from Native American authors or authors that are sharing that Native American experience. So this is, from what I understand, a modern day story where there's corruption in this particular reservation and there's a teen that is helping root out that. So I'm really excited to have this on my list, and I am really interested in this particular story. As a biracial unenrolled tribal member and the product of a scandal, 18-year-old Donis Fontaine has never quite fit in, both in her hometown and on the nearby Ojibwe reservation. Donis dreams of studying medicine, but when her family is struck by tragedy, she puts her future on hold to care for her fragile mother. The only bright spot is meeting Jamie, the charming new recruit on her brother Levi's hockey team. Yet even as Donis falls for Jamie, certain details don't add up, and she senses the dashing hockey star is hiding something. Everything comes to light when Donis witnesses a shocking murder, thrusting her into the heart of a criminal investigation. Reluctantly, Donis agrees to go undercover, but secretly pursues her own investigation, tracking down the criminals with her knowledge of chemistry and traditional medicine. But the deceptions and death keep piling up, and soon the threat strikes too close to home. Now Donis must learn what it means to be a strong Ojibwe woman and how far she'll go to protect her community, even if it tears apart the only world she's ever known. So I am super excited to read that particular book. And if you've read this book, I know this one was really popular on BookTube. So if you've read it, definitely leave me a comment down below and tell me what you thought about it. The next book that I am super excited to read came out actually in June of this year. And that is The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dahlia Harris. So this is Harris's debut novel, and it's an adult thriller about a woman named Nella. 26-year-old editorial assistant Nella Rogers is tired of being the only Black employee at Wagner Books. Fed up with the isolation and microaggressions, she's thrilled when Harlem-born and bred Hazel starts working in the cubicle beside her. They've only just started comparing natural hair regimens, though, when a string of unfortunate events elevates Hazel to office darling, and Nella is left in the dust. Then the notes begin to appear on Nella's desk. Leave Wagner now. It's hard to believe Hazel is behind these hostile messages. But as Nella starts to spiral and obsess over the sinister forces at play, she soon realizes that there's a lot more at stake than just her career. A whip-smart and dynamic thriller and sly social commentary that is perfect for anyone who has ever felt manipulated, threatened, or overlooked in the workplace. So this really gave me this is the second book that has given me like that Get Out vibe now that I'm thinking about it. I also really thought that Ace of Spades also was like that Get Out vibe. So this is interesting. I'm kind of noticing a trend here, but when I read this, I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I just think that this is fascinating. I can see bits of humor in this. I don't know why. It's not saying that it's a humorous book. It's supposed to be a thriller. But I'm really excited to read this one. And if you've read this one, definitely leave me a comment down below. Do you think it's worth reading, or do you think I should pass on it? The next book that I am really excited to talk about and hopefully read before the end of the year is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This book was published in April of this year, and it is actually a memoir about Zauner's life. I typically don't go for nonfiction memoirs. I definitely do love nonfiction, and I read a ton of nonfiction books, but when it comes to memoirs, I typically don't find myself as intrigued. There's very special or high profile people that I would read their books. Like, for instance, I loved Michelle's Becoming memoir. I am slowly trying to, get myself through Barack's memoir. And if Beyonce ever wrote a memoir, I'm first in line for that particular book. As far as I know, that doesn't exist. If anyone does, let me know, because I'm severely lacking in my life if that does exist, and I don't know. But yeah, so I don't really typically go for memoirs. However, this particular memoir, I have seen it everywhere. That red cover it just draws you in, and when I read the summary of it, I was like, that seems very interesting. An unflinching, powerful memoir about growing up Korean American, losing her mother, and forging her own identity. In this exquisite story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Michelle Zauner proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. With humor and heart, she tells of growing up one of the few Asian American kids at her school in Eugene, Oregon, of struggling with her mother's particular high expectations of her, of a painful adolescence, of treasured months spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up, moving to the East Coast for college, finding work in the restaurant industry and performing gigs with her fledgling band, and meeting the man who would become her husband, her Koreanness began to feel ever more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal cancer when Michelle was 25 that forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gift of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. I think she has a story that is somewhat similar to mine in that she's very close to her mom. I am as well. And although my mom has not passed away, God forbid, knock on wood, and she won't anytime soon, I can understand that closeness and understand her story when it comes to having that relationship with her mom. And I'm a foodie and I love food, so you talk about intertwining food and family, and I'm all there. So really excited to learn more about this particular person, Michelle, and hopefully I will love it as much as people on BookTube and Book Talk and everywhere else in the bookish realm love it as much as they have. Whew, I have been recording for 30 minutes already, and I need to stop. Okay, so the next couple books actually just released this month in November, and I cannot wait to get my hands on some of these. The next book that I am excited to talk about is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. This is the sequel to Our Violent Delights, and it is a duology. And like I said, it was released in November. And I'm really, honestly, I don't know too much about this particular duology, but I love the cover. So I was like, ooh, let me see what that's about. So I looked it up, and the year is 1927, and Shanghai teeters on the edge of revolution. After sacrificing her relationship with Roma to protect him from the blood feud, Juliet has been a girl on the warpath. One wrong move, and her cousin will step in to usurp her place as the Scarlet Gang's heir. The only way to save the boy she loves from the wrath of the Scarlets is to have him want her dead for murdering his best friend in cold blood. If Juliet were actually guilty of the crime Roma believes she committed, his rejection might sting less. Roma is still reeling from the Marshal's death, and his cousin, Benedict, will barely speak to him. Roma knows it's his fault for letting the ruthless Juliet back into his life, and he's determined to set things right, even if that means killing the girl he hates and loves with equal measure. Then a new monstrous danger emerges in the city, and though secrets keep them apart, Juliet must secure Roma's cooperation if they are to end this threat once and for all. Shanghai is already at a boiling point. The nationalists are marching in, whispers of civil war brew louder every day, and gangster rule faces complete annihilation. Roma and Juliet must put aside their differences to combat monsters in politics, but they aren't prepared for the biggest threat of all, protecting their hearts from each other. So, this really just gave me like the Green Bones saga vibes by Fonda Lee. I'm just so, the thought of like Chinese gangs, I don't know why, that just intrigues me so much. So I'm really super excited to not only read this book, which is currently actually technically a highly anticipated release for 2021, but also the prequel, which I haven't read either, but look. The next book that I'm super excited to talk about is Noor by Nnedi Okorafor. This book was published in November of this year, and this is a science fiction novel about an Africanist or African futuristic world where a woman who by all accounts is considered a powerless outsider, yet ends up bringing down the world order. Anwuli Okoduli prefers to be called AO. To her, these initials have always stood for artificial organism. AO has never really felt natural, and that's putting it lightly. Her parents spent most of the days before she was born praying for her peaceful passing because even in utero, she was wrong. But she lived. Then came the car accident later that disabled her even further. Yet instead of viewing her strange body the way the world views it, as freakish, unnatural, even the work of the devil, AO embraces all that she is. A woman with a ton of major and necessary body augmentations. And then one day, she goes to her local market and everything goes wrong. Once on the run, she meets a Fulani herdsman named DNA, and the race against time across the deserts of northern Nigeria begins. In a world where all things are streamed, everyone is watching the reckoning of the murderess and the terrorist and the saga of the wicked woman and madman unfold. This fast-paced, relentless journey of tribe, destiny, body, and the wonderland of technology revels in the fact that the future sometimes isn't so predictable. Expect the unexpected. So I love that this one is actually set in Nigeria. We know it to be Nigeria, especially the northern part of Nigeria. A lot of times stories that are written in Nigeria focus on the city life, so Lagos, maybe Abuja, but I'm really excited to see this science fiction futurist story actually set in northern Nigeria, and to learn more about AO and DNA and see how they get out of this mess. I think it's really cool that it's something that's being streamed where everyone can kind of see what's happening. But I don't know, I'm super excited. If anyone has read this yet, I know it just got published not too long ago, but if anyone's read it, definitely leave me a comment down below. All right, and we are at the end. Ooh, finish strong. The next book that I am super excited to talk about is Her Name is Night by Yasmin Anjo. And this is Anjo's debut novel. This also came out in November of this year. This is a suspenseful thriller about an elite assassin heroine on a mission to topple a human trafficking ring and avenge her family. Her Name is Night revolves around Nina Knight, codename Echo, a highly trained assassin for the tribe, a clandestine international organization dedicated to the protection and advancement of the peoples and countries of Africa around the world. Her Name is Night is a propulsive character story, an action thriller driven by retribution, passion, strength, and coming to terms with your own true self regardless of what anyone calls you. So, I love the fact that we have a heroine, we have an assassin, it's sexy, love it. I'm really excited to honestly just read about the story. It gives me thriller / action, so I'm excited. So my video stopped recording, but what I was essentially saying is that I am super excited to read this particular book and have it on my list. And if you've read it, I know again it just came out recently, but if you've read it, definitely leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought about it. All right, folks, and so that is it. Those are some of the highly anticipated books that came out this year that I have not quite gotten to just yet, but I'm super excited and definitely do want to read. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought down below. I am super curious. All of these have been very highly rated, at least a 4 or 5 on Goodreads, but you know, Goodreads doesn't always tell the full story. Let me know if you've read any of them and what you thought about them. If you thought that they were worth the hype that they've been getting so far throughout the year, or if they were duds. Really curious to know what you think. If you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. Doing so definitely helps please the algorithm gods and puts this channel in front of more viewers like yourself. So people that love diverse stories, those that are coming from women of color authors, indigenous authors, just people of color, Asian, Hispanic authors, or just stories about those particular communities. Giving this video a thumbs up definitely helps with putting that channel in front of more people that want to hear stories like that. So it would be an honor if you would give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and hit the notification bell so that you're notified of my next one. That is it for me for today. So I'll see you next week. Bye.